Moore, it is awesome to see you. How are you doing?
I'm good. I feel like we just talked a second ago.
We did. We should have turned the microphone on probably about 6 minutes ago because we got into some of the stuff that I think anybody who is operating in their own business runs into. It's this kind of balance of, hey, where do I decide to put time, energy, and attention, and how do I work through the mental trade-offs of each of those things? And I was challenging Moore to start eliminating things. He's like, look, I just don't have stuff I can eliminate. Do you want to talk a little bit about continue that part of the conversation?
Yeah, for sure. Because I always think about it because I always look at my calendar and move things around. Yeah, I mean, let's say LinkedIn, right? Like LinkedIn is my go-to.
Okay.
There are a couple of things that I do on LinkedIn to generate leads, and if it weren't for LinkedIn, I would have been in trouble. So there are a few things that I do. One, every day, I try to every day, connect with minimum 10 people on LinkedIn.
Awesome.
And that 10 could be a mixture of ICPs and or influencers. So people that wouldn't have my buyer persona in their audience, but we don't necessarily compete, or maybe we do compete, but we just share a similar audience. So minimum 10. Most this past couple of weeks, it's been mostly on ICPs, and they're not necessarily. I'm not necessarily going to prospect to them, but I want them to see my content, so I connect with them. And then I spend the next thing I do on LinkedIn is send 10 DMs, and that DM could be included as part of the connection request. And the DMs are not pitchy, so those DMs could be something like, let's say somebody viewed my profile, and they were, I don't know, founder of a startup that could be a prospect in the future. I'll connect with them and then start a conversation like, hey, you checked out my profile, what's up, what's going on, and just start DMing back and forth. I'm not pitching anything, I'm just or having a conversation, because they'll naturally just see my content. They will naturally go to my website. Who am I? They're going to stalk me, and then over time, they eventually, if there's a problem, they're going to reach out. Maybe I'll prospect them. But anyways, so 10 connection requests, 10 DMs, and then I will spend the next session or the next task commenting on 10 people's posts, minimum 10. And those people will be a mixture of ICPs, influencers, whatever it is. And those comments aren't like, love this post, great. It's really, really, really specific. Those comments could be a post within themselves. And then maybe I'll just, but yeah, so that's 3 to 4 different action items. That could take easily an hour, sometimes more if I can't get creative. The only thing I can probably delegate is the first part of that. So if anybody views my profile that could be an ICP or whatever it is, that initial connect with a personal note, that could be delegated. Everything else cannot be delegated. I don't. That's because it's creative. I need to do the creative. But what would that take me? Takes me 10 minutes or so to do. Very easy. I can buy back my 10 minutes. Everything else I can't really delegate because I'm working on the business. I'm solo act. So for example, if I'm building out one of the scope of work I'm doing for clients, like building out a sales playbook, I can't delegate it. I mean, I could delegate that out, but I don't have anything in my contract that says, hey, I will have X, Y. I have a few other people on my team that will do the playbook. I also don't trust anybody. I also don't know anyone that can do it as good as I. Like, I just don't like. So a lot of stuff I have to do within the business, and then I try to carve out time to prospect, because my prospecting is very one-to-one. I'll do a lot of research on the prospect, reach out to them. Answering emails, I have to answer a lot of the emails. I don't get a lot of emails, by the way. It's not like I have a ton of emails to answer for prospect or clients. And that's it. Like, there goes my day, because the rest of it is filled with working on clients. So not much I can delegate out.
So, as a operator, as a single operator, solopreneur, solo operator, is that what you consider yourself, a solopreneur?
Yeah, I mean, I would even call myself an entrepreneur, but sometimes, like, maybe the imposter syndrome of me that it gets to me from time to time will be like, you're not an entrepreneur, you're just a solopreneur. But I started a business. I started a six-figure business, a high six-figure business. And year one of starting the business, I hit high six figures. I matched my base income that I was making as a VP at the time, not my OT, but my base. Year two, increased that. Year three, I've already matched my income from last year since January. So I think, and I think like an entrepreneur. I may not be in the right business model, but not like someone could look at consulting and be like, hey, why don't you just hire a bunch of consultants and experts in the industry, and when you go do the hunting and they do the work. I could do that. I don't want to do that. My goal isn't to build the best consulting business. It's not what I'm interested in. And two, I don't want to deal with hiring and logistics and all that crap. I'm not, and I don't think I'm good at the logistics part of that. Like having little mini Moores running around and figuring things. Like, I don't think I'm good at that. So yeah, so I consider myself an entrepreneur, and when I'm negative, I'll consider myself a solopreneur.
Why did you say just a solopreneur? What's negative about a solopreneur?
It's almost like you're not yet an entrepreneur. First, you're an employee, then you're a freelancer, right? Then you're a solopreneur, then you're an entrepreneur, then you're a businessman.
Yeah. Okay, so if I say preneur, what's that mean to you?
Like an entrepreneur, or just
No,
there's a lot.
just preneur, like
A lot
preneur,
of
nothing before it.
yeah.
Preneur.
I don't even know what that. Like no, for me, like I don't even know what that means. Like for me, it's like entrepreneur is like a thing. I feel like solopreneur, the term solopreneur is like a newer term that came around. And then there's a new term also, intrapreneur.
It's
It's
not.
like
They're not new. Like this is not. These aren't new. You may have been exposed to them for the first time, but it doesn't mean it's new to you. It doesn't mean it's new in the market. Like I spoke about intrapreneurs at a Disrupt HR event back in 2018.
well, 2018. Yeah, 2018 for me it doesn't seem that far
Okay,
away.
so I guess the question I should have asked is what's new. But so preneur, someone who thinks different so that they can do different. Someone who wants to, and by doing that, they're going to make an impact on others. Now, there's so many things that you can throw in front of it, kind of like back when they were talking about, like, well, heck, Apple. So you got an iPhone, you got an iMac, you got an iPod, you got an whatever. So there's something that they throw in front of each of these things. Well, you can do the same thing on the preneur side, and you can break it down. And solopreneur, to me, someone who thinks differently, wants to do different, build a business, but never wants to hire people. They don't want to hire people. Entrepreneur, someone who is going to build a business, is going to plan on hiring, building scale so that that business at some point in time either is sellable or will persist after they're gone. Entrepreneur, someone who
That
has
I
always
heard.
wanted to do something. And that the first time I heard that, that was Seth Godin who said that, or years before it. Like entrepreneur, someone who wants to do all this stuff but doesn't have the guts, doesn't know how to do it. And I've been in each of these areas. Like I've been in the, hey, let's build a business that we could potentially sell. Let's shrink things down, which is the stage that we're in right now. Let's do it inside a W-2 role, which would be the intrapreneur. So the intrapreneur, think different, do different. They're going to be really creative. They're going to drive innovation inside an organization, work on making outside impact. They're not going to be stuck doing things the way that things have always been done. They've got a new perspective. But they're going to do it inside an organization. And there are a lot of organizations who are looking for that innovation. So if you look at preneur as the suffix, the prefix is, hey, let's figure out what it is and in what context so that you can apply the same thinking in different operating environments. What do you think?
I like it. I mean, like there's logic behind it. It's I think maybe my opinion of a solopreneur is not good enough, or like the term. Like if someone said, "Are you an entrepreneur?" I would say yes. I wouldn't be like, "Oh no, I'm a solopreneur," right? But if they ask me, "Are you a solopreneur or an entrepreneur?" I'm like, "I'm a solopreneur," right? Like, but the way I thought about it, I always, for some people, for them, if they have the big house or the big car or the nice car, they've made it. That's like what drives them. For me, if I say this is for many years until the last 3 years, if someone tells me they own their own business, they're an entrepreneur, they own their own business, I'm like, that's made it. Like they've made it. In my opinion, that was like how my perception. And so I felt, and I think part of the reason is, I think for a lot of people, their work or their identity is tied to their careers. And so if you are an employee, in my head, I was like, if I'm going to be an employee for the rest of my life, that's all I am. I'm just average. I'm always going to be under somebody. Even if I'm an entrepreneur, I don't have the balls enough to do it on my own. I don't have the capacity, whatever it is, right? That's just the way I've viewed it. And whoever went on though and can start fire from scratch, now that's impressive. And so solopreneur is like, you're almost an entrepreneur, but you're not there. Like that's my perception, even based on the definition. The definitions make sense, and the logic is there. Like, yeah, I wouldn't, and I know I think this year I'm way more self aware of and comfortable accepting what I'm not good at or what I dislike to do. I dislike hiring. Even when I was a VP of sales, I just didn't enjoy it. It wasn't a fun task for me. I didn't enjoy the recruiting. side of things. I didn't enjoy sitting through interviews, and I don't think I'm good at logistics. I don't have that skill set. I think I'm good at marketing. I think I'm good at sales. I think I am good at like business dev, like partnerships, stuff like that. But like logistics, my brain like implodes. And so the way I think about scaling my own company is if I'm doing it alone and I have to like bring in people and employees, I wouldn't want to bring in those employees. I would want to have a partner that would bring in those employees, and the partner would be responsible for hiring the employees. I'd be responsible for like the front end, the creative, the go to market, stuff like that. So I think if I wanted to build a true, like let's say true business, a scalable business, or one that can be sold, I wouldn't want to do it alone.
Sure. Well, you couldn't do it alone. Like, I mean, unless I guess with some of the brands and some of the kind of the influencer type stuff that happens out there, there are people who've sold businesses that are tied to their kind of name and have done that. So I shouldn't say you couldn't do it. I think it's a lot harder to do it because what's the value that the person, what's the value exchange? Like, what is somebody getting? Someone
Right.
might acquire an audience really quickly, which is cool, but who's going to, how are you going to continue to cultivate and grow that audience if the audience is connected to some kind of hero worshiping that's happening directly with a single name instead of something
Yeah.
else? Yeah,
I look at, Jeremy Minor, seventh level.
I don't.
Jeremy Minor is one of those, like, I won't say up and coming, but you just see him everywhere now, or a lot of you're going to start seeing him now
Okay.
on Instagram. He's like a sales trainer.
Okay.
He used to do sales for, I don't know if it was security, whatever. It was like door to door sales. He was 100% commission, and he hit like he just broke records, top salesperson. Anyways, he started blowing up on social, Instagram ads, whatever it is, and think of like your Alex Hormozzi's in terms of like their level of brand recognition and size, your Grant Cardones and stuff like that, or your Andrew Elliott's. Right, like, I don't know if you know Andrew Elliott.
Here's the cool. And this is an imposter syndrome thing that I've got going on just in general, and I think it's important to pull apart before, and we'll get into the rest of the story that more are sharing here. You just mentioned four people. I know two of those four people. I know 50% of the people that he mentioned. These are people who might be household names to everybody else. And there's a challenge that I run into when I think other people that I know are household names and realize that people don't know them. So don't get so enamored by the name that's out there or the idea that there's not space for you to come in and do new things. You can come in and do new things, but more, keep going.
On that note, by the way, really quick, I'll just put a pin on my first story.
Yeah.
I used to have this like limiting belief that there wasn't enough to go around. And then I started in the first 2 years of my business, I started like really thinking about like self-improvement, like self-investment in the business. So like buying courses, coaches. And I remember I think year one, I bought a few different courses, but they were all courses from different competitors. They were all competing against each other. And for 1 minute, I wasn't like, oh no, I'm going to buy it from him. That means I can't buy it from him. I was like, no, the more the merrier. I'll get it from everyone I can. And then I bought coaching. I bought a coaching program, and it was an expensive program. So I wasn't like, and I didn't want to get distracted by two different coaches. So I said, oh, let me go through this program for 6 months. And if I'm like die hard, I'll like, it's a no brainer. I'll do it again. Worst comes to worst, I can come back. Let me go look at another coach. And I ended up hiring a different coach because I drank my own Kool-Aid. Now, when I speak to like prospects, whether they're evaluating like on the BDC side, when I'm putting out content and trying to sell a course or whatever it is or community, I'm no longer concerned with, oh, they're going to not buy mine because they bought somebody else's. And when I get on the call with them, I'm like, you're evaluating that person, you should buy their course. You totally should buy the course, and you can buy mine too. Like, it's not a big deal. Anyways, going back to my story. So this Jeremy Minor is those two people that I've mentioned that you know of. Jeremy Minor like sort of like sits on that. You'll start to see him. You'll start to see him. Anyways, he's a sales trainer. He's what I do. I'm a sales consultant for B2B, but like my B2C side is heavy on sales training and coaching. And he built like a serious business. Like, he's probably generating, I don't know, maybe 50, 60, $100 million in revenue a year. I don't know. He's doing very, very well. He has like his VP of sales. I think he has like a board. He has like a CEO of a company, even though he's original. It's a company. It's a real company that can be sold. It's called Seventh Level. He can sell it. He's the face of the company, but Grant Cardone has Cardone University. He's the face of it, but you can sell the business. I think he franchised it actually, Cardone. When I see that, I'm like, more, could you do that for yourself? My brain doesn't go like, yeah, I want to do that. I think it could be a limiting belief. It's like, do I even want to build something that big and deal with so much? But then my brain goes into like, you'll have to do it yourself. I'm like, so I don't know how Jeremy and all these people ended up getting to the point of that much scale. Like, did Jeremy actually have a partner? Did he just realize, hey, I'm missing this employee that would help me, and he's slowly hired? This is the terms what I would call logistics. I'm weak there. And so I always wonder. I even went on like a crazy Google deep dive and Reddit deep dive, like, who does Jeremy Miner's marketing? And I found some interview, I think, or some article that they set up all his funnels, all his campaigns. He was just, the spokesperson, so to speak, and they ran everything. And maybe he probably signed up to some communities and courses that said, hey, like maybe Dan Martell's, and it said, hey, you need to hire a COO. Maybe you need to hire. It's possible. Like maybe that's where they're getting it from, like the operationalizing their business. Anyways, that's a little bit of a long rant, but that's what I think about for myself. I'm like, how can I get, maybe I'm thinking too far ahead, but like, how do I get there? Would I need to hire? Would I need to operationalize it? If so, where do I start? And it gets complex. And I do believe in the value of communities because of that. Because you don't have that how-to knowledge, you have ideas and theories and, assumptions. I think also the value of a coach and the value of a community is not to teach you what you don't know how to do. It's to validate what you think you should do. That's the value, in my opinion.
It's the cool thing about value. Value is in the eye of the beholder, right? Like I can't tell you what to value, and I can't tell somebody else what to value. I can reveal, ask questions, and start to determine what is it that they value based on their perspective. Depending on the community, like a community that we're both a part of, which is Pavilion. And we both have been in Pavilion for a number of years. I joined in like 2018, 2019 kind of area. And there's a lot of back and forth that happen in different channels inside Pavilion. The value for me in Pavilion, it comes to like three big things. Number one, the connections that have been made on a mentor-mentee relationship level, where they've connected me with someone who wants to be a CRO at some point in time, or wants to be a VP of sales at some point in time, or it was just moved into a VP of sales role. And they're either because of industry or because of way of thinking or because of something else, they just determined that we were the right fit for each other. So that's one big one. Second one that's really important for me is having a place to go where if I need to ask a question, I can ask the question. I can get perspective from people around what their experience is with whatever. And then the third one that's been helpful for me is to read the room and just kind of get a view for how things are changing in the areas that I operate in. Like a lot of times, the things that we've solved for 3, 4, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, are the things that new people are starting to see and they don't know how to solve for yet. So we can help them solve for it, help them realize that, hey, you know what, fire does exist out there, and help them through that process. So those are the big three for me. It's not business development, which a lot of people will go and join and get involved in those organizations for that piece. So everybody's going to gather a little bit of a different level of value out of the communities that they're a part of, or the groups that they invest in, or the places where they hang out in. The challenge, I think, that's out there is helping people ask the question, like, for what? Like, what purpose does this serve? What am I trying to gain, get, give, whatever that is, as we go through it? I don't know.
Yeah, for me, I joined Pavilion. It was because I started selling to B2B, and I thought, well, I can either cold prospect, but who do I cold prospect? Okay, so I can do some research. That's hard. Or I can maybe join a community of my buyer personas and just see the questions that they ask. Then I'll prospect to them based on the question. Like, right, if they're asking like, we're struggling here, how do I do X? I can just respond there and then email them, hey, I answered your question on Pavilion. Would you be open to a conversation? And And exactly that was my intention. Plus, like networking, I generally believe in like planting seeds and networking, and it's important to be, if you're at least with the business that I'm building, I need to have a brand. You need to have a brand. I'm not selling a product. I'm selling my name. Like I'm selling, if you're packaging your experience and advice and selling it on the market, it holds weight when the person that's selling it is known. It's not like I'm selling a phone. I'm selling an iPhone. Or I'm selling a product, a physical product. That's different. But if you're selling advice, then who the hell are you to give this advice? That's a brand. And so I thought like Pavilion is one place to go. And I was right. I mean, I renewed it ever since I started because I was able to monetize from Pavilion. I ended up developing a very strong relationship with a head of sales. He used to be the head of sales at a company called Duda. And I remember he was on Pavilion. He asked a question about outbound or whatever. He was looking for a trainer. I was like, I have nothing to lose. Let me cold email him. And we ended up getting a call. I ended up flying out to Colorado, did the training. We stayed in touch, and we're friends now. For me, it was valuable from a monetary, and then plus I got another friend, and he left me a referral and a recommendation, and I look out for him. He looks out for me. And then they have value for one-on-one coaches. Like I have a marketing coach, one-on-one marketing coach, and I have a lot of ideas. And I'm, you start a business, you have like freaking shiny objects, and you're like this, that. You need someone to like tell you no. And I remember I had this coach is like, hey, what do you think? I'm like, you tell me. I hired you for you to be the boss of me. Like, there's a reason why I hired you. Like, if I didn't know, I want you to tell me what I'm wrong. That's me. If I'm hiring somebody and paying them a good amount of money, I want you to tell me I'm wrong. It's funny, when I was an employee, I wouldn't want that.
What's your process for making decisions?
Well, it depends on what's the decision.
So, like, let's say a decision: do I do this or do I not do this?
Yeah, right. It depends on like the context of it. Do I order Uber Eats? Do I post on LinkedIn this post? Do I execute on the strategy? The decision's always, it depends on the decision. So if it's like maybe which marketing strategies do I execute on, or like where should I spend time creating content? There's YouTube, Instagram, newsletter. There's a lot of places. At some point, I think when I first started year one, I was like, I need to be everywhere, omnipresent. So I was posting consistently on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, my podcast, YouTube Shorts, LinkedIn, Twitter Thread. Like it was into Instagram, but I was half-assing everything. And then I got burnt out. I was like, oh my, I missed one day. I think I was sick, whatever it was. I was like, oh, I missed one day. I'm like, I gotta catch up with all these, and I burnt out, didn't post anywhere. And then like I recap, I'm like, all right, I need to make a decision. How do I make that decision? I said, okay, well, what worked for me so far? LinkedIn. All right, LinkedIn, you're in. Let me look at my calendar. Realistically speaking, if I decide that I want to do YouTube or Twitter, what does good look like? Oh, good looks like editing, and I need to do this, and I need to do that. I need to record, I need to have. All right, I can't do that because I can't commit to that. Could I commit to LinkedIn every single day, 1 hour, and do good quality posts? Yeah. Could I take a LinkedIn post and with a little bit of low lift create a newsletter out of it? Yes. All right, I'm going to commit to LinkedIn and my newsletter. What about podcast? More? Can you do podcast? Maybe. I don't want to commit to it, but I'll put a time block on the calendar for Fridays to do podcasts randomly if I have extra time. But for now, I'm going to commit to LinkedIn and newsletter. That's how I went through it, and that's what I started doing. Like it was like LinkedIn, and then newsletter, and then I have a podcast block on my calendar for Fridays. But I don't. Besides this one, I'm not doing it. Prospecting. All right, more. Who are you going to prospect to? Do you prospect to partners or do you prospect to end users? Well, it depends. Where is most of my leads coming from? Cold outreach or inbound through my content? Cold outreach from my inbound through my content. So I should cold outreach to partners where I can create more content. Right? So like that's how my brain goes through these motions.
Yeah. So when you go through the process of kind of saying, "Hey, look, I'm doing a lot right now, and there isn't anything that I can eliminate," can you apply the same process that you just walked through to all of the things you're doing now?
No, because all the things that I'm doing now are things that it is eliminated. The stuff that I have now is an eliminated version of what I had.
Yeah.
For example, again, I will take, if it means I will sleep 4 hours a night, and that means I have like 5 extra clients, so be it. I'll do it. I don't care. I will burn myself out just to get the work done, and then because I'm optimizing. I'm not optimizing for growth. I'm optimizing for cash right now. to the point where I have enough cash where I can pull back and say, all right, now it's time for me to like buy back my time. I have enough cash. I don't need the business. I like the business, cool, and then I can buy back my time. So that's where I'm optimizing. So when a lead comes through and says, "Do you have capacity?" My answer is always yes. I can take more, and I will just move my schedule around. If it means Saturday night at work, I'll work Saturday night. Sundays, no problem. I'll figure it out. Obviously, it has to be worth my time, but then it forces me to also be creative. Where I'm like, hey, I'm getting a bunch of these requests. It's not worth my time because of their level of budget. So let's do something in a cohort base, and I can consolidate my time into 1 hour and then serve many. Yeah, but I look at my calendar now. Like I'm looking for next week. All of my Monday is booked for an on-site with a client. Like I'm blessed to be able to be this busy. Like I would not want to be an entrepreneur, solopreneur, and have nothing to do. That would be I'd be broke. So I'm very happy that this is happening. So it's almost like a good problem to have. But it also gives me perspective. Initially, I thought, hey, I want to have a consulting business. Now I have a consulting business, right? So now it's like, oh, now you're in this situation. Do you still want to go on that path? Yes, but in a different type of path. I want to hedge it. I want to have more to B2C side. Yeah, I'm looking at my calendar. Like everything is carved out to the T. And I can even tell you my schedule. Like everything is carved out to the T. I barely even have time to prospect now, like cold outreach prospect. Yeah, there's nothing really I can remove. I'll tell you one thing though. You mentioned something pre-recording. It was building out systems where it shows the prospect, your client, that you're working, but you don't need to be working those hours necessarily. I don't think I do a good job of that. I have, I think I have a little bit of that employee residue in my brain where it's like, if I'm not working X amount of hours, then I'm stealing from my prospect or for my customer. And so even though I know I can get something done in a shorter period of time, I'm like, I have the flip side of that argument. But if I charge X amount of dollars and I'm only putting in 2 hours of work a week, but I'm getting the job done, imagine if I put more than 2 hours. Like I feel like it's an employee mentality. So I try to like fill up my calendar so I can feel good that I'm doing good by the prospect, by the customer. I think I'm limiting myself there.
Sounds like it. Like,
Yeah,
do they pay?
I know it. I feel it. I'm like, do I really, to spend 6 hours in one day for this project? Probably not.
I mean, do they pay you hourly?
I don't position I don't position myself hourly.
Yeah,
Meaning,
but you hold yourself accountable to hourly.
I hold myself accountable to hourly to an extent. Like
Yeah.
if something comes up in the family, I got to do something in emergency. I will do it, but I feel guilty.
Yeah. So even worse, you judge yourself on an hourly basis.
When I do the work, not when I'm in like discovery mode and I'm prospecting and I'm in the path to close. No way. Like I'm super like, yeah, I'm like and I tell them like, you're not paying me for my time. You're paying me for my experience. You're paying the amount you're paying me is so that I can get you the answers quickly.
Yeah. So I mean, so like the math to kind of think through, and I mean, I've been thinking through and doing different things with this to test in different ways over since launching Catalyst back in 2015. But it's going through and saying, all right, what are the things that I'm delivering that are super high value from the perspective of the client that I can optimize from a revenue perspective and know that I can deliver in a shorter period of time, or potentially be able to outsource that work to somebody else. Like one of the things we're looking at doing is how do we bring Sean, who's our 21-year-old, into the business to do some of the things that we'd like to do from a marketing perspective, or do some things in the background relative to responses on stuff that might come in on LinkedIn, so that it's not outsourcing to some person in the Philippines, which people will come and try to position that as a solution, but we're doing it with a human that we're able to help that human kind of figure out and deconstruct what works from a problem solving perspective, what works from a brand perspective, what we're trying to create. Like in the business, there are a lot of people who said, why not name the business Mike Simmons? Why name it Catalyst Sale? Why name it Catalyst? Why rename it Catalyst X? Why do all of those things? And part of that is a view that there's going to be a part in time where it might make sense to part out pieces and sell those pieces. At the same time, I realize that I'm an acquired taste and I don't like people to some extent. Like, and I say that with a smile on my face because I do care about people and I want people to be successful. Their success is more important than their feelings throughout the process of it. And if I end up surrounding myself with too many people who need to have their feelings managed in the process, it burns me out. Like it just fries me. It's like, look,
Oh
don't.
yeah.
So hiring a lot of people to do that kind of stuff doesn't really make a lot of sense. The other challenge that ends up happening is you go through and say, not everybody's going to think the way that I think or position things the way that I think or be able to facilitate a conversation the way that I do. So can I create an experience like that for a client if I'm not the one doing that in the room? Well, maybe not. I'm not really that good. I'm not perfect. I'm not special. I absolutely can help people sell or be in a success role or be in an operating role in a different way, shape, or form. The challenge ends up coming when it's your personal content and you start to feel about that owner, at least for me, that ownership of here's the model, here's the process, this is what works, and being able to help work through things when they start to break. So I don't know. I know this started with a conversation around, hey, solopreneur versus entrepreneur versus intrapreneur versus wantrepreneur and all of the different models and how you kind of build scale. I, you know, I think it comes down to, at least for me, where I've gotten to at this point in time, and I've got, wrinkles and gray hair and bags under my eyes and all of that other kind of stuff from the work and the potential burnout, is how do I make sure that I'm doing what I'm made for? How do I make sure I'm doing what's making the biggest impact? And when there's opportunity to either outsource components of it because that can help us scale, or increase the number of people who could potentially do what I do out in the market to drive impact, how can I create those kind of scenarios? So that's how I'm thinking through some of this stuff. And I don't know. I mean, like
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure it out.
Speaking of white hairs, you see this? I don't know which side. This side. I have a lot of I have a lot of white hairs. But 3 years ago, it was all brown. Then maybe to some extent I have outsourced like a good chunk. So for example, I hired somebody, a coach, a marketing coach, and the reason why is I need to improve my funnels, my email newsletters, just like the whole flow.
Yeah.
And I knew I can figure it out on my own. Like I started it that way on my own, and it worked, but it required a lot of time and investment. I didn't really. I realized I kept pushing that project aside because I just didn't have the time, and then I found somebody that could help me with there. Ended up hiring them. So technically I have outsourced it, right? Like right now I'm working on releasing a new discovery course. The project was for me to like dump all my ideas down and he'll organize it. I didn't want to organize it. And I'm like, hey, I'll dump my ideas. Can you just organize it? And like, I don't have the time to. He's like, yeah, okay. I'm like, all right. The next step was like to design it. I'm like, I don't have time to design it. Can you design it? He's like, what about a name? I'm like, come up with a name for me. So technically I have outsourced that. Maybe I see it differently. I think of it as a marketing coach, not an outsource person to tell me, because I still have to put the creative into the course, the IP. But I've outsourced a big part of that. Otherwise, that would have taken me 3 months just to do what I needed to do.
And one of the cool things when you do that is you're giving back into the community or giving back into the market. You're creating opportunity for growth across the board. You're not allowing scope creep to get you into a situation where you're doing stuff that you're not made for. And I think that's another one of those challenges as people are trying to figure it out. It's like, well, hey, I could do this and I could figure it out. Maybe I'm not ready to outsource it, or maybe I am ready to outsource it. And then some people also run into the challenge of not having the capability to outsource because they may not have the means to do it. So they just have to battle through it until they get to that point where they've got the cash that's available to help support some of the other decisions. This stuff is hard. It is.
Everyone's figuring out. Listen, even when I hired my first like coaching program, I didn't have the cash lying around. I mean, I had savings. Like, am I going to take the risk and take it out of my savings? I ended up taking a bigger risk. I opened up 3 different credit cards, and I did balance transfers, and then I got a fourth credit card, and I put on that fourth credit card, and I took risk. Yeah, I found the money. Like, right, like I'm like, I need to do this. I can either figure it out on my own, which I can. I'm capable of, but at the risk of shutting down the business because I won't know. Like, right, like that time goes by figuring it out, and it's like too late. The cash burned faster than the time it took you to figure it out. So I was willing to sacrifice the money up front for the time it would take to burn it. And I'm like, and I was even a little, I'm like, even if I'm a little successful, at least I can pay back some of that debt, and then I can slow down the bleeding. And I've done that. Like I'm pretty much going to pay off the debt soon for that initial investment. But yeah, listen, I'm learning a shit ton, right? Like, yeah, and you're also you're forced when you start a business, you're forced to. I don't know if you're like a man of faith or whatever. I'm Jewish Orthodox. So in Orthodox Judaism, like there's a commandment to believe in not God specifically, but yes, God, but like it's called bitachon, which means trust in God, not faith. Faith is like, oh, I know it's going to be okay. Faith is faith. Think of faith as like the leaf, and then trust is the branch.
Okay.
Okay. So faith is I have faith it's going to work out. Trust is I know it's going to. It's not faith. Trust is not saying I know it's going to work out. It's like I know that God knows what He's doing. Think of it like you have a best friend or your dad or whatever, your brother. When they say, "Hey, I'll do this for you," you're relying on them. It's like a reliance. It's like I trust that they know what they're going to do, and even if they screw up, I trust that that's okay. That's trust in Judaism. So we have a commandment. Like if you're not following that commandment, you're not fulfilling that commandment. Just like you're not allowed to eat milk and meat in Judaism. Like that level of.
What more? I just lost your audio.
What about now? Test.
There we go. Go.
Okay. When I was an employee, there's an illusion that your job is safe because they hired you for X amount of dollars per month. So it's almost like it's a retainer.
Yeah.
Until you screw up, right? It's an illusion but it's really you can get fired at any time. So the test of faith doesn't really exist that much. Maybe when you have a bad boss and you have to deal with him, fine. Otherwise, but then when I went on my own, oh man, you're 100% commission. There is no like if you have a client that you send up and it's a 3-month contract or a 6-month contract, in month 5, like that contract is about to end and the deliverables are met. And you know that the paycheck is going to stop after that. The true test of faith, I think, is when someone goes on their own and sticks through it. That's when you're really put up to the test. I'm telling you, like it's and yeah. So it's risky, but I played it 1,000 times in my head. Working for somebody is much riskier.
It's a matter of what game you want to play, what control you're willing to what ownership you want to take on, and what you want to pass on to others. And that's where I think, again, with that whole entrepreneur, solopreneur kind of thing, it's all the same piece. You're just deciding which trades you want to make. The interesting thing about operating your own business is whether you're an entrepreneur and you have people working for you as part of a team, and you have a team of, heck, we had a team of 18 at one point in time.
Wow.
Or you're a solopreneur and you don't have a team. When you go to the bank to get a loan, you're still self-employed. So like there's another view that will kind of take it and say, hey, don't worry as much about the title that you give yourself when you go out there and do it and you want to take the risk. Just go out there, take the risk, test, you figure it out, and go from there. So let's talk about discovery, because I know this is a topic that's near and dear to your heart. What are the typical mistakes that people make when it comes to discovery?
There is some reps. The common theme is like they ask too many questions or they don't ask enough questions.
Okay.
But what I've noticed is I call it like a discovery 4D, like a discovery quadrant, where you have some reps, they know what to ask, but not why they're asking it, and not when they don't know when to ask it and how to ask it. Questions. Some know what to ask, why they're asking, when to ask it. They just don't know how to actually ask. And they have a bunch of these combinations. And if you break down these combinations, there's about 16 combinations, which is a lot of it's a lot of ways you can screw up. So I think number one, salespeople, a lot of them, they don't know where they fall in that quadrant. They may have an idea, but they can't put their finger on it. Sometimes they're like, yeah, I know what to ask, but for some reason it's not working out for me. It's because they probably don't know why they're asking it, and then they don't know how to ask it, and maybe even when to ask it. They're asking all their discovery questions in one shot. So I think that is a common mistake I see in discovery with salespeople, even founder-led sales. I see it happen a lot. And because of that, the discovery is shallow. They only focus on one layer of motivation when they should peel back 2 or 3. When they do ask a question, it can come off very interrogative. They maybe are following like medic or hopefully not banned, but if they are, whatever, and they were just going through the motions, like I need to fill out this field in my Salesforce CRM, so I'm going to ask this question, then this question. It's not a conversation, and so like you can still, they should lead with conversation and sort of sprinkle in discovery. What happens is they lead with discovery and try to sprinkle in conversation. So that's what I've seen consistently, even with like the senior AEs and you know VPs or salesman. Like I see it across. I do it sometimes. I screw up sometimes.
How do people know when they're screwing up?
So I think they would need to. It was part of the actual course that I'm going to release. There's a quadrant, the what, why, when, how, and grade yourself on where you fall into. Are you a 1 through a 5, on 5 being you're great, 1 being you're horrible, on knowing what to ask, and you do that exercise across the 4. And the question is, how do you know if you're good or not? Listen to your calls.
Yeah.
In real time, like pay attention. You'll feel it. Like, ooh, that was awkward. Ooh, that didn't feel right. You'll feel it, and then listen to your recordings and get somebody else to listen to your calls and recordings, and let them assess it, and then you identify. All right, I'm really good at knowing what to ask, why to ask, how to ask it. I have the right phraseology, but I'm putting in the question just in the wrong place, and it feels weird. It's just like it's screwing everything up. All right, cool. So now they have to work on knowing where to place their questions.
What are some of the mistakes that a VP of sales or director of sales makes when coaching members of their team on discovery?
One common one is they want their sales reps to say it exactly how they say it, verbatim. Like, say the way I say, repeat after me. And that's one. And I've seen this a lot, even with like founders that I've worked for. They wanted to create like a system where everyone's following the same playbook for sales. Like, I get it, and you should, but you can't have different personalities follow the same way of asking questions. Just it doesn't flow right. That's why you'll see someone will crush it, some won't. So that's a common mistake when it comes to coaching discovery. Others will give way too many skills for the sales rep to juggle at a time to improve. Try juggling one ball. Take one ball, just juggle it in your hand. Easy. 2, all right, a little harder, but you can do it, right? Just like this. 3, 4, then it starts to get a little difficult, and you probably will drop the balls after 1 or 2 attempts. Same thing with like skills. Try to focus on one skill. Easy. 2, okay, fine. 3, 4, 5, then it becomes hard. Which is funny because a lot of like these discovery or sales scorecards that you see, they're not graded. The VPs or sales managers are not grading the rep on one specific skill. They're grading them on multiple skills at a time. So they'll have like a discovery scorecard, and then like, did they ask about metrics? Did they ask about stakeholders? These are all individual skills. Just take one of them and have a discovery scorecard, and it's only for one skill. Did they ask about metrics? Are they doing that consistently across the board every week? If so, let's move on to the next thing. More like compounded skill teaching.
Is how is technology changing this? Like when you think about Gong or Chorus or Sybil or some of the other ones. I mean, Avoma. I mean, there's a number of these that are out there that will kind of get into the like AI supported coaching of reps. How's the technology progressing there?
Yeah, I think it's needed. There's one, I think it's called Replays
Okay. Yeah.
with a Z.
Yeah.
Dave Kennett, I think it originally started as like hire a coach, and then he turned it into, I think he told me it wasn't scalable, so he ended up building out this like software that lives in Gong, and it gives you data points on your reps, like, oh, they're weak in this particular skill. I think that's important because there are 2 approaches to audit, because every sales coach or VP of sales should audit their sales reps before teaching them something. What's status quo today? Where are they at in terms of their skill set? So you got to listen to calls, and then you have to listen to a bunch of calls, and then find the pattern, the trend, and then say, all right, out of X amount of calls, this rep is strong here, weak here, strong here, weak there. They can improve here. If you do this manually, it's going to take a while. And because it's going to take a while, you may not do it properly because you only listen to a handful of calls, which is still going to work because it's pattern, it's trend, so it'll probably appear. But if you use something like, again, I've never used Replays, but from my understanding of what they do, if you use something like Replays, it'll do that level of auditing for you after you've put in some sort of input, and then it'll spit out a report like, hey, out of 20 reps, this person is weak here, so maybe you should coach them on that area. I think that is my understanding of what replays does, and if it is, then I think it's a complementary tool to coaching. It doesn't replace coaching. There are some other tools that I've seen for like AI tools, whatever it is, that while the rep is on a sales call, it'll like put out like a prompt, like, "Hey, ask them this." I haven't seen it live officially. I feel like it could be distracting, and you're not really teaching the sales rep the right frameworks, and you're teaching you're well, what's that quote? Like, give a man a fish, he'll have lunch for the day, whatever. Teach a man to fish, whatever. It's like that. It's like you're giving them fish. You're not teaching them how to fish.
Yeah. I think the challenge ends up being like how you're instrumenting those. Like I sat on a call with someone where they were showing me their tech, and the feedback I gave was, you think this is good, but I can tell you just based on the data that you're showing me how what you think is good is wrong relative to and aligns with common mistakes that are made in those kind of meetings. Like I'll give you a good example. Discovery call, review of a call that rated really high. The person who was doing discovery spoke 65, maybe 70% of the time. And you're kind of like, what are you learning throughout that process? It becomes obvious when you see it and you feel it every day, but when people go in and start instrumenting these machines, you got to be careful about who did the instrumentation in there.
Yeah, and that's the thing with a lot of these systems. For it to work properly, the person setting it up has to properly set it up. Like keyword trackers, you can easily, like Gong, Avoma, all of them, they have keyword trackers. So whenever a word is being said on a call, it's going to track it and then collect data for it. Now, the transcription is not bulletproof. It'll make mistakes. And so you're collecting keyword tracker. So how do you, like, it's going to give you a snapshot. This rep performs, has a high close rate, but look at them. They have, they're asking the most questions. Okay. All right. Then you can make quick decisions on that. But if you listen to the call, maybe their questions are like, any questions, right? Like that's not really a good question.
Right.
And it's not necessarily an indicator that their deals are closing. It could be territory. It could be so many other things. So you got to take it. I wouldn't say trust it fully.
So you're like, when someone says demo to close, you're the person I think of. Like that's just right out of the gate. There's a lot that you've put out there related to discovery, and you're just demonstrating this level, but that level of expertise and experience that you have around discovery and help manage and coach and help improve it. What about people who position themselves as experts in a space but aren't necessarily experts in the space? They start to, like, they're either repurposing other people's content, or you can tell that they're going and leveraging something like ChatGPT or Claude, and have a good prompt and start pulling things in. How can a founder start to suss out or figure out the context behind what someone is sharing? And are you seeing more and more repurposing and reusing content out there?
What I am seeing is, well, I'm even repurposing my own content because it's hard to start fire from scratch every day is very hard. It's much easier when the fire is already sort of on a low flame. You could transfer that fire out.
Sure.
So I repurpose my content because I have right now 30,000 followers on LinkedIn. When I look at my post, 30,000, I don't get 30,000 views or 30,000 likes or comments. I get 200, 300, 400. So a good chunk of my followers, majority of them, are not even seeing my content or engaging with it. So I will, and similar to like ads, you will see an ad over and over and over again on TV until it becomes top of mind. So I repurpose my content. What I have been noticing is pods. I like to think that my posts on LinkedIn are tactical. I know when my posts are lazy, and I will see lazy engagement. But when I spend time writing a post and it's tactical, I will like write it out, close it out, open it up, reread it, and then I'll schedule it out. And I see somebody else that has vanilla, basic, very flat, like very basic stuff. Like if you were to go on Google, like how to grow a business, first you got to think of a name, and then it's like a very generic, fluffy answer. That's the type of posts I'm seeing that are getting a lot of engagement. I can tell if they're using pods, which for anyone, pods is just like a group of people that support each other on their posts, which I'm not necessarily anti. I'm sort of, I guess you can call me, I'm anti pods, because for myself though, I used to be in one a long, long time ago, And I realized I'm not getting good at copywriting. I'm like trying to cheat the system, but I'm not really good at getting copywriting. And I really want to get good at writing. And pods take that away. They cripple me. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try to beat it without a pod. I'm just gonna work really hard on my copy. And if I can do that, then great. For me, I'd rather have less engagement, but I've written good quality copy versus more engagement, shittier copy, and I get tons of views. It's just a thing with me. You can tell someone using a pod if you're looking at their engagement and their likes, the amount of likes that they have consistently throughout all the posts is pretty much hovering around the same. Like I saw somebody, I like he's a nice guy. I follow him. We spoke here and there, but I see his posts. I'm like, they're not good. They're really not good. And I'm not saying that like they're just not good. And the type of engagement he gets around 300 or so, between 300 to like 370, 380 likes per post. It's pretty much damn consistent. And the same people that are liking his posts are liking all his other posts. And the same people that are commenting. And the type of comments are very chat GPT like. This is a really inspiring post, right? There's no flavor behind it. And even if he has a hot take, and that's the post hot take, and he shares a hot take, the comments are like, that's really good. I never thought about it that way. You can tell when you've been around the block, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, a few hours a day on LinkedIn throughout the day. You start to like suss out, you just feel it. So that's something that I'm noticing. You're seeing something really interesting about, like right now my brand is considered Demo to Close. I'm actually rebranding to it's gonna be I bought the domain, or I was gifted to me, Full Cycle Sales.
Okay.
Because I've noticed and this is maybe a lesson for people that are starting the business and founders and creating content. I was told, I read a book, I think 1,000 True Fans or 1,000 Raving Fans. The idea is you build out 1,000. If you have 1,000 people that love your stuff, you've made it.
I think it's
So
Kevin.
right.
I think Kevin Kelly.
Yeah.
Or Kevin Rose. Kevin Kelly.
I was like, okay. But in order to do that, you need to niche down. So I was like, all right, sales. That's not niche. B2B sales, not enough. B2B SaaS, not enough. B2B SaaS sales demos. Great. Niche. And I would rank number one even on Google for, if you typed in B2B SaaS sales demos, boom, I was number one. I remember I made a mistake of my one of my clients, who's also a very good friend of mine, but he's a very smart marketer. He said, you need to run Google ads because you would crush it. He's like, I'll recommend you somebody that we use. It's like, okay. And I trust this guy. I trust him like blind. I'm like, no, what I was thinking of actually hiring the coach that I have today, I wanted to hire that coach previously. No, run Google ads, bottom of funnel. That's top of funnel stuff. I said, okay. We did Google ads. I don't know, spent $10,000 in 2 months or whatever it was. Not a damn lead. Maybe one from India that thought I was an IT company. And my friend Gaetano, who is like a genius, awesome SEO guy for these B2B companies, and I would tell him, like, what's going on? He's like, dude, these landing pages are great. The copy is great. Like, look at these Joe Schmoes that have shitty landing pages. He's like, the problem isn't ads. It's the strategy behind what you're doing. Think of like, is somebody going to hire somebody from a Google ad? No, you probably want to build more brand, create more top of funnel stuff. So I think my strategy was off. Two, I niche myself too much. When we were looking for keyword search volume, maybe like 100 people were looking for SaaS sales demos a month. Very, very little. Like nobody was looking for that, which could be good, but it's also bad. It just didn't perform. So I made the mistake of over niching. And then I realized, I'm like, well, demos don't really you don't close on demos. You close after the demos. And in order to get the demo, you need to do discovery. And part of the demo is discovery. It's not, demo is just like it's like you have a hand, demo is one of the fingers. That's it. And so I niche myself too much. But when I did speak to somebody that needed help on demos, I owned it every time. But it wasn't enough. There was too much of a slow drip. So I said, I need to like create more content on stuff that I know, but I just don't post about. So I started creating content on discovery. And then I started creating content on prospecting. And then I realized, like, hey, maybe I need to like rebrand a little bit, because I'm no longer, even when people are in my community or when companies are hiring me to do trainings, it's not on demos. It's on either prospecting, discovery, and everything in between. So I realized, like, well, what do I do? What should I name it? Full sales cycle or full cycle sales. So I've rebranded. And one of the things that I've realized as part of the rebrand with my coach that I'm working on is I've never sold, like if you look at Nate Nasrallah, Ian Koniak, Jamal Reimer, they've all sold $1 million deals, multi-million dollar deals true high enterprise, overly complex, takes years to close. I've never sold those. I've sold like lower enterprise in my business where I'm selling a 6-figure contract with prospects for my business, but not like a $600,000 contract, $500,000. I've helped some reps close $300,000 contract through my coaching, but me personally, no, I haven't done it. And I would post some content around enterprise stuff, and I was like, it didn't resonate. I always felt like I was a fraud. I was like, I'm gonna start maybe just posting more SMB, mid market, and lower enterprise, and I feel at peace with doing that. And so something to think about is you should post about the stuff that you know, because there's like the posts that do really well on LinkedIn, in my opinion, are the ones where like you can tell if somebody actually knows what they're talking about. You can tell. It's like I don't know what it is. Like it's like this rawness to it. It's authentic. You can just tell. That's why my post on LinkedIn on Sundays about consulting does really well, because I'm experiencing it. So like the words that I am the buyer persona. That's why Adam Robinson from retention.com and RB2B, when he makes these posts, and he even said it himself, he used to post about like e-commerce and it would never get hits. And people were like, who are you to post about this? And then he started posting about his own business, which is B2B SaaS, and he was getting crazy hits. He goes, it was working because I am the buyer persona. I'm posting about myself. And so if my buyer personas are like me and they're on LinkedIn, it's going to resonate. And I've noticed that on my Sunday posts. So it's a discipline, I think, to stay in your lane. There is a way you can take even though I'm no longer an account executive, I coach AEs and I used to be an AE, so I can take posts and massage them to tell that narrative, which I do. But I no longer make posts about selling high enterprise deals and business cases. I remember I made a few posts. I'm like I have no experience here. This is totally out of my lane. And the problem was I was also following these content creators that post about these high level enterprise deals. And I was getting distracted. I'm like, oh, look at their post. It's crushing it. I got to do a post like that. Big mistake.
Why do people get drawn into making that mistake? Why did you get drawn into making that mistake?
Because for me, at least, I wanted a lot of engagement, which for me, I'm trying to get engagement. And then at the bottom of my post, I have a link to sign up to like a resource that I have, and then they're opting in to my email list, which is how I was able to get over 6,000 opt-ins subscribers in 3 months or less. Insane. It was because I was following really good high quality content at the end of it. So for me, the value of high engagement on my post leads to more opt-ins. So, and then there's like the materialistic or superficial side to it of dopamine hits. When you make a really good post and you get like only 5 likes for the rest of the day, and like everyone's getting a ton of likes, you're like, there's that. But I want to create good quality posts. It's all about brand. So the less people know about me, the less my brand grows. The more people know about me, the more my brand goes. And the bigger the brand, the more opportunities, the more DMs you get, the more referrals you get. That's just how, and I've noticed it. If I have 1 week of just really great posts, 400 likes, 300, it's consistent, people are seeing it, that is usually a record-breaking week for inbound leads.
How do you describe brand?
How would I describe it? I heard a few ways other people describe it, and I really liked it. I can't remember what it was, but how I would describe it. When someone thinks of, let's say, I'll tell you this, when I was in real estate, we used door knocking, and I told my mentor, I'm like, why would anybody want to sell their house to me when I door knock? They're like, that's not the point. He goes, if you show up with your face over and over a period of 12 months, when they think of real estate, or when the word real estate pops up, or buy or sell homes, or any of those keywords pop up, your name automatically pops up with it. That's what I think brand is. When you think of luxury watch, usually what people think of is Rolex. When you think of soda, you think of Coca-Cola, right? When you think of, I don't know, luxury car, people usually default to like Mercedes. That's brand. So how do that's the value brand. So in order to do that, you need to be omnipresent and you need to be well known. And I think it was like well known or known well, or a little bit of both.
What do you want your brand to be known for?
I don't know yet. I mean, I know yet when I'm saying, because I feel like that question is like, what do I want it to be known for in the long run? In the short term,
Yeah,
I want it to be known for like expert SaaS sales trainer, sales coach trainer. Sort of
What's the
like what.
difference? What's the difference between a coach and a trainer?
So yeah, great question, because I used to not understand the difference until I actually started doing it. Um, a trainer will say, we'll come in, we'll show you a framework and say, here's my picture of my kids. Here's what's working. Here's what you should do. Here's what I've experienced. Here's sort of the framework, the template, the right way to do things. Here you go. Coaching says, all right, now let me take you by the hand and show you how it's done. Let me take the concepts and then show you how it's done for your use case. It's one on. I would say coaching is more personal, more nuanced, and training is less nuanced. You could do training one to many. Coaching, you can still do one to many, but you could do group coaching, but it's less. Training is, let me show you what to do, and then maybe coaching is, let me show you how to do it. That's how I think about it. Yeah.
So I'm one of those guys who gets maybe 20 likes on a post ish, plus or minus. Sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's 15. How would you train me to get better at LinkedIn, given your experience?
I would probably spend time, something that I did when I was creating content on TikTok and YouTube Shorts. I would go on TikTok and I just started scrolling.
Yeah.
And when you start scrolling, there's always like an introduction to the video. Here are these are, and when you do this enough times, you start picking up on the patterns. You're like, oh, the way that most people are introducing is either this way, or pick one content creator and go to their TikTok and they're doing well. Start scrolling. You'll see the way they're introducing their video is a variation of one or three ways. So one thing I would do is I would look at what type of, like, I would do that with your content to see how are you starting your post, what's like the overall sentiment. I would look for hooks. Are your hooks, like, if I'm scrolling by, is the hook, like, for example, when someone says hot take or unpopular opinion, you should show up to a meeting 10 minutes early. It's not really an unpopular opinion. It's not a hot take, right? Like, it's like, it's not that polarizing, and they try to be polarizing. There's actually, let me pull it up now as we're doing this. I think just like as somebody builds a brand, need to think about, you're asking certain question about like framework, like what's your why, and like why are you doing things, and what is the process, and how are you gonna, like, that whole like framework and thinking about execution. You need to do the same thing about content. I'm just pulling it up. So this is like a little blurb that I have in my like Notion board that's for content strategy and distribution. Instead of creating content telling people what they should do, tell them what you did. Share stories, experiences with lessons. Instead of creating how to, create content that says how I made this mistake a lot, where I create content like 5 ways you should do this. If you're doing this, you should stop. Right? Like very like these style type of content. It was also very surface level. It was very like, you need to do this because I said so, versus, last week I had a call with a salesperson and I made 3 mistakes that I now regret. Like that is a personal story. So that's one. And then I would create pillars of content. So what I have, for example, is I have my content ethos is, don't try changing someone's beliefs by changing their actions. Change someone's beliefs to change someone's belief to change their actions. And so how do I create content around that? There's like 3 pillars. What are my pillars for my content? What do I want to be known for when I create content? I want to build authority. I want to build trust, expertise, and credibility, and I want to build affinity and relationship. I want people to know me as more, not just the coach guy. So in order for me to build authority, I need to write content on sales leadership, go to market, VP of sales type of stuff. If I want to build trust and credibility around sales, SMB, mid-market, lower enterprise, I need to write content around sales tips. If I want to build content that will build affinity and relationships with my audience, I need to share personal stuff, maybe family. I don't have to, but like just maybe a personal story, my life as a solo entrepreneur. And it's usually in a story format. It's never in third person. It's always in first person. So I'd probably look at your content and see if that's set up. You have to also believe in the content that you're posting. And maybe someone does, or maybe you do, but maybe it's not articulated in a right way. Maybe it's not conversational. Maybe it screams too much like a generic piece of content. I think storytelling. Again, I haven't spent time on your content, but telling stories. And what I also know is using numbers in your content is powerful. So like last week I closed a $15,000 MRR deal and it only took me 3 months to do it. Like there's metrics behind that. People want to hear it versus last week I closed a large deal and it took me 3 months. That's not enough.
Yeah. Very cool.
Uh,
What
yeah.
when you say a story, what's a story framework that you like, or what goes into a story? What makes a story a story?
Think about like when you talk to a friend and you have like some news to tell them or your wife, you're like, you won't believe what happened today.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you're right. Or I have something to tell you. You just promise not to say anybody, tell anybody. Or please don't kill me, but I need to tell you something really important. Like that's how you would start a story. But the way you got to massage it a little bit for LinkedIn. For me, it could be something like it could start with like a timeline, like last week, 2 months ago, 2 weeks ago, 1 month ago, whatever it is. Like it starts with the timeline, and then just literally tell the story. Sometimes it could help to just instead of writing it out, dictate it out. Like thing on your phone, you can have the audio and just like tell the story. I think that could be helpful. Maybe have, if you tell me if I record, let's say we hang up right now, it's so much easier for me to answer when you ask me a question. But if I were just doing a video, be on the spot, it'd be very hard for me to give this type of advice. I need to be prompted. And sometimes it's hard to create content because you're not prompted to do it. So something that I do is I look at like a pavilion and I look at the types of questions that are coming in. I'm like, okay, that's an interesting question. I know I have the answer to that question. Let me make a post on that. So last week in Pavilion, someone said da, 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 right? Like I'll do that, or I'll just take the question itself. How do you like today's post? If I were an SMB AE and I wanted to close mid market and enterprise deals, but I couldn't be in that role, here's what I would do. I saw someone post about that or ask about that, so I'm going to answer it in a public forum. So that's like a little hack that I do.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So we started this with some of the challenges of running your own business and some of the kind of the lessons learned as you kind of work through, and everybody kind of skins their knees as they work through it. What's going really well? Like what's something that is really going really well today based on all of the experience that you've gained that someone could benefit from hearing about?
What's going well? I mean, my business is doing well, so like I'm happy there. But like, I just see opportunity that I can be grasp onto. So what's going well? The content, like I mean, I could be doing better, but I'm creating quality content. So that's driving engagement. I'm keeping track of my activity on LinkedIn. So I mentioned I connect with 10 people. I'll send 10 DMs, 10 comments. I'm tracking that. So if I only send out 9 today, I'm going to track 9 was done today. I'm keeping it all in a spreadsheet. So I do that. I try to systematize those things. What else is going well? I've done a better job of operationalizing my consulting clients. So when I first started out and I would pitch and someone said, yeah, I want to go forward with you. I didn't have any specific deliverables. So I was making a lot of mistakes. Like I under communicated with the founder and he thought I wasn't doing anything. I didn't have like updates. I just made a lot of mistakes. I've operationalized a lot of it. I think one of the lessons is over communicate the hell out of everything. There's some things maybe better not to say, but over communicate. Every week, send the founder, whoever your client is, a weekly update. If that means you meet on Zoom for 30 minutes, okay. And I personally don't like to do that. It's annoying for me. I rather send a Loom video. It's a Loom video with sharing my screen, showing the updates and action items. I do that every week. When I come across, I made this mistake. If I find anything while I'm engaging with the client, like I'm working on auditing or whatever it is, and I found something like, I used to save that to give them an update at the end of the week. I'm like, well, in my head, I'm like, what's the point? I'm like, let me just tell them in real time. So anytime I come across anything of value, like last night, I was watching an interview on Nathan Lodka's YouTube channel where he interviewed like the CEO of this company, whatever that this CEO, my client knows about, which would be interesting because they're in the same industry. I'm like, hey, really interesting interview with a CEO. You should check it out. Like I'm like treating it like a community. I think that's the key. I think that's like a eureka moment for me in the last 3-6 months. I'm treating my clients like, cause I'm on their Slack channel. I'm treating it like a community. So I'm giving them updates whenever I see something of value. I'm not just giving them updates on deliverables. I'm like sharing stuff. Even if it's outside of my domain, I'll give them advice.
And anybody who's listening to this right now can take that advice or take that perspective and apply it to what you're doing whether you're working inside an organization or you have clients that you're working with as part of an organization that you're in the process of building, there's an opportunity to communicate. There's an opportunity to continue to provide value back. And in order to be able to do that well, you have to listen to people. You have to know what they care about. You have to know what they're interested in. And you have to be situationally aware to certain risks that come up. So more awesome conversation. Where can people find out more about what you're working on?
I think LinkedIn would be best. I'm in the middle of a rebrand, so I'm not even going to direct you to my website, but LinkedIn.
All right. So check out more on LinkedIn. If you know somebody who would enjoy this conversation, please share it with them. Let Moore and I both know about it on LinkedIn. Sales is a thinking process. Business is a thinking process. Life is a thinking process. How are you thinking differently about yours?